So today we'll do this story with the photographer by Stephen Lecoq, which is there in your class 10 ICSE, right? Now let's begin the story. See, first of all, let's discuss about Stephen Butler Lecoq is his full name. He was a popular Canadian humorist, educator, lecturer, and an author of more than 30 books. This is what you should know about him. He was awarded the Mark Twain Medal for Humor, the Royal Society of Canada's Lon Pierce Medal, and the Governor General's Literary Award for Non-Fiction. He has written humorous fiction, basically, humorous, you understand, which evokes comedy, which evokes laughter, literary essays and articles on social issues, politics, economics, science, and history. Most of his works originally meant for magazines. Alright, most of his works was originally meant for magazines. Now let's talk about the plot of the story first, what all happens. So as you know, the plot of any story consists of different things. First is the exposition, means how the story begins. So here in the exposition we find that the narrator, who is a 40-year-old person, a middle-aged person, he visits a photo studio to get his photograph taken. Alright, the photographer looks at him unenthusiastically and asks him to wait. So there we come to know that he was very busy, so he asked the narrator to wait for some time. But the narrator had to wait for an hour, and after an hour of waiting, the photographer takes the narrator into the studio to click his photograph. Right now, after that, the rising action is there, which takes us to the climax. Now the rising action actually consists of different events. So the photographer observes that the narrator's face is quite wrong. He says that the narrator first feels glad when he was trying to correct his face, because he was very enthusiastic to get his photograph done, and that too a good photo done. Alright, so first he was happy, but then he gets annoyed at the photographer's behavior. Alright, the way he keeps finding fault in his features. The photographer tries different angles and asks the narrator to do some facial acrobatics. Do this way, that way, move it this side, that side. Now comes the climax, which is the turning point. So the photographer clicks the photo in a moment of animation when this person wasn't prepared. When he was sitting there straight, not moving, at that time the photographer spent that time in adjusting himself. Now as soon as the narrator wasn't prepared, suddenly he clicked the photo in a moment of animation. This is what he calls him. Now after that, the narrator is shocked to see his photo, as the photographer had totally retouched it. Okay, he didn't show him the photo that very day, but yes, he called him on Saturday. So when he went there and he saw the photo, the narrator was literally shocked. He couldn't believe that it was his own photo. Alright, so the outcome was that, describing the photo as a worthless bauble, the narrator leaves it and walks out teary-eyed. So teary-eyed here shows that he was extremely sad. Clear? Now, if we talk about the characters, the story has only two characters. One is the narrator, who is 40 years old, self-aware and satisfied with his looks. He knows about his looks, and at the same time he is satisfied also, whatever he has. Calm, composed man and resolute. On the other hand, the photographer is described as a drooping man. Drooping man means who lacks in strength and is not firm. Natural scientist, he is called natural scientist. Why? Because he carries out experiments. The way he retouched the photograph of the narrator also, he made many changes. It shows that he keeps experimenting with his art, with his skill. Indifferent to others, he is lost in his own scientific pursuits, and yes, lack of professional ethics, because the way he treats the narrator, who is his client, so it clearly shows that he is very unprofessional. He doesn't have customer service etiquettes that he should have actually. Now the main feature, if we talk about the title, of course the title is very interesting and appropriate, because with the photographer, the story is about that only, experience of the narrator with the photographer. If we talk about the theme, it is appearance versus reality. Okay, what appears can be different from reality. Now, the story was set in 1913. So, for that, you need to understand that at that time, technique of photography was not much developed, right? And of course, the story is set in a photo studio. The first person narration has been used. Language is very lucid, simple, and direct. And of course, if we talk about the literary device, so you will find that in the story there is a use of irony. Is it clear? Okay, now let's continue with the reading of the story. I want my photograph taken, I said. So, I is the narrator, can be the author also, but it's better if we refer to him as the narrator. The photographer looked at me without enthusiasm. So, this was, as soon as the narrator asked the photographer that he wants his photograph to be taken, he could notice that the photographer was not enthusiastic about it. He wasn't much bothered. He had that indifferent attitude. Alright. He was a drooping man. Drooping means lacking in strength and wasn't firm, in a grey suit with the dim eye of a natural scientist. Dim eye of a natural scientist means like a scientist who always has a dim eye, means he is not much bothered, he is not he is not able to see the things clearly. Why? Because he is always lost in his own thoughts. Alright, he sees what he wants to see. So, he was like a natural scientist. The author describes him as a natural scientist. Why a scientist? Because he keeps experimenting. But there is no need to describe him. Everybody knows what a photographer is like. So, from this line, we clearly understand that the author tries to suggest that he was like any stereotypical photographer. Everybody knows what a photographer is like, and he was exactly like that. Sit there, he said, and wait. So he asked the narrator to sit and wait. I waited an hour. I read the Ladies' Companion for 1912, the Girls' Magazine for 1902, and the Infant's Journal for 1888. I began to see that I had done an unwarrantable thing in breaking in on the privacy of this man's scientific pursuits with a face like mine. Now you see, when the photographer asked him to wait, he had to wait for an hour. And during that time, he started looking at those magazines which were kept there. Now see, the kind of magazines which are kept there are all fashion magazines, Ladies' Companion, Girls' Magazine, Infant's Journal. And two things happened when the narrator was reading those magazines. First of all, he began to realize that he has done an unwarrantable thing, and that was to intrude in the privacy of this man who was so busy. All right, and that too intrude in the privacy of a man with a face like his. So what does it show? It shows that unrealistically he started comparing himself to the professional models that were there in the magazine, right? After an hour, the photographer opened the inner door. Come in, he said severely. Severely means very seriously. I went into the studio. Sit down, said the photographer. I sat down in a beam of sunlight filtered through a sheet of factory cotton hung against a frosted skylight. Now, please understand, when this story was set, the technique of photography wasn't much developed. So, it's not like a photo studio of these days, nowadays. It was a photo studio where there was a roof light made of glass. The photographer rolled a machine into the middle of the room and crawled into it from behind. He was only in it a second, just time enough for one look at me, and then he was out again, tearing at the cotton sheet and the window panes with a hooked stick, apparently frantic for light and air. He was literally frantic for light and air. He was adjusting things. The narrator was expecting that, suddenly he will click the photograph, but he did not do that. He made him wait, and he kept adjusting things. Then he crawled back into the machine again and drew a little black cloth over himself. This time he was very quiet in there. I knew that he was praying, and I kept still. Alright. So the narrator, he thought that, he was praying means he wanted the photograph to be perfect, and for that he was making efforts. and he also kept sitting there motionless. When the photographer came out at last, he looked very grave and shook his head. Oh, so when the photographer at last he came out, this time he was very serious and he shook his head and he said, "The face is quite wrong." "I know," I answered quietly. "I've always known it." He sighed. "I think," he said, "the face would be better three quarters full." Three quarters full means he was telling him an angle that if you move it three quarters, like side face, okay, at that time it will be better. "I'm sure it would," I said enthusiastically. Why enthusiastically? Because he was excited that the photographer wants to click a very good picture of him. For I was glad to find that the man had such a human side to him. "So would yours, in fact," I continued. "How many faces one sees that are apparently hard, narrow, limited, but the minute you get them three quarters full, they get wide, large, almost boundless in." So at this point of time, the narrator realized that a photographer knows the technique how to click a good photograph so that any kind of face can look better. Alright. But the photographer had ceased to listen, but he wasn't interested in his talk. He came over and took my head in his hands and twisted it sideways. I thought he meant to kiss me and I closed my eyes. But I was wrong. He twisted my face as far as it would go and then stood looking at it. He sighed again. "I don't like the head," he said. Then he went back to the machine and took another look. "Open the mouth a little," he said. I started to do so. "Close it," he added quickly. Then he looked again. "The ears are bad," he said. "Droop them a little more." "Thank you now." "Now the eyes. Roll them in under the lids. Put the hands on the knees, please, and turn the face just a little upward. Yes, that's better. Now just expand the lungs. So, and hum the neck. That's it. And just contract the waist. Ha, the twist hip up toward the elbow. Now, I still don't quite like the face. It's just a trifle too full, but now you see, he wasn't even able to finish his sentence when suddenly the narrator, he got irritated. He was highly frustrated. Why? Because he was trying to make him so many things, and again he said that I still don't like the face. I swung myself round on the stool. "Stop," I said with emotion, but I think with dignity. "This face is my face. It is not yours, it is mine. I have lived with it for 40 years and I know its faults. I know it's out of drawing. I know it wasn't made for me, but it's my face, the only one I have." I was conscious of a break in my voice, but I went on. "Such as it is, I have learned to love it. And this is my mouth, not yours. These ears are mine. And if your machine is too narrow," here I started to rise from the seat. And as soon as he started to rise from the seat, snick, means the photograph was taken. The photographer had pulled a string. The photograph taken. I could see the machine still staggering from the shock. "I think," said the photographer, pursuing his lips in a pleased smile, "that I caught the features just in a moment of animation." "So," I said bitingly, "features, yeah." "Features? You didn't think I could animate them, I suppose. But let me see the picture." "Oh, there is nothing to see yet," he said. "I have to develop the negative first. Come back on Saturday and I'll let you see a proof of it." On Saturday, I went back. The photographer beckoned me in. He called me inside. I thought he seemed quieter and graver than before. This time, he was more quiet and more serious. I think too, there was a certain pride in his manner. He unfolded the proof of a large photograph and we both looked at it in silence. "Is it me?" I asked. So, as soon as the narrator saw the photograph, he was literally shocked. He couldn't believe that it was his own photograph. "Yes," he said quietly, "it is you." And we went on looking at it. "The eyes," I said hesitatingly, "don't look very much like mine." "Oh no," he answered, "I have retouched them. They come out splendidly, don't they?" "Fine," I said, "but surely my eyebrows are not like that." "No," said the photographer with a momentary glance at my face. "The eyebrows are removed. We have a process now, the Delphide, for putting in new ones. You will notice here where we have applied it to carry the hair away from the brow. I don't like the hair low on this skull. Oh, you don't you? I said. No, he went on. I don't care for it. I like to get the hair clear back to the superficies and make out a new brow line. What about the mouth? I said with a bitterness that was lost on the photographer. Is that mine? It's adjusted a little, he said. Yours is too low. I found I couldn't use it. The ears, though, I said, strike me as good likeness. They are just like mine. Yes, said the photographer thoughtfully. That's so, but I can fix that all right in the print. We have a process now, the sulfide, for removing the ears entirely. I'll see if. Listen. So here we find that the narrator was actually surprised to know that the photographer had completely retouched his photograph. Right? He made so many changes using different techniques. Sometimes he calls it sulfide, sometimes he calls it delphide. So using these techniques, he had retouched. He changed his mouth, he changed his eyebrows, he drew complete new eyebrows. So this was something which the narrator did not like at all. And he said, listen, I interrupted, drawing myself up and animating my features to their full extent and speaking with a withering scorn that should have blasted the man on the spot. Listen, I came here for a photograph, a picture, something which, mad though it seems, would have looked like me. I wanted something that would depict my face as heaven gave it to me, humble though the gift may have been. I wanted something that my friends might keep after my death to reconcile them to my loss. It seems that I was mistaken. What I wanted is no longer done. Go on then with your brutal work. Take your negative or whatever it is you call it. Dip it in sulfide, bromide, oxide, cowhide, anything you like. Remove the eyes, correct the mouth, adjust the face, restore the lips, reanimate the necktie and reconstruct the waistcoat. Coat it with an inch of gloss, shade it, emboss it, gild it, till even you acknowledge that it is finished. Then when you have done all that, keep it for yourself and your friends. They may value it. To me, it is but a worthless bauble. I broke into tears and left. So the narrator was highly frustrated. And not only frustrated, he was disappointed also. Why was he disappointed? Because he wanted a photograph of himself. He wanted a photograph which looks exactly like him. He wanted a photograph which can be kept by his friends as a memory after his death. And what he got, what he saw, was exactly not like that. It was completely retouched. It was completely altered, changed as per the convenience of the photographer. And this is what sometimes happen, that we do not value what we have and we always like to change it. We want to change our looks, but when we want to do it ourselves, that is another thing. But when someone else is doing it without our consent, it really hurts. And it really hurt the narrator also, and that's why he had tears in his eyes and he left from there without the photograph. I hope you have understood this story. Alright, read it once again on your own. Try to look for the words which are difficult, find out their meanings and add them to your vocabulary. Okay?